A good evening to all our attendees who have joined us from different parts of India and also from around the world. We welcome you to webinar number 3 under our Combating Crisis series. Since our previous webinar, which happened last week, the Indian automotive and commercial vehicle industry has made significant progress in getting back to action, with almost all major OEMs partially resuming manufacturing operations at their plants. Yesterday, as we know, we also heard our Prime Minister talk about the 20 lakh crore stimulus package to help revive the economy. And as we speak, the Finance Minister has been sharing details of this package, which we will touch upon probably towards the end of our presentation, maybe in the Q&A. This is where we stand today in our fight against the COVID pandemic. So today we have with us Mr. Satendra Kumar from Frost & Sullivan, who will be sharing interesting insights on how the Indian CV industry can overcome the COVID crisis. So I'd quickly like to give an introduction of Satendra before he starts his presentation. Satendra Kumar is Program Manager for the Mobility Practice at Frost & Sullivan for Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. And he is an expert in the area of commercial vehicles. He has over 10 years of business research and strategy consulting experience, especially in competitive intelligence and benchmarking, new market entry and diversification strategies, and end consumer analysis, emerging technologies, and customer purchasing behavior. Satendra has proven expertise in client management and management of several Fortune 500 companies. He has expertise in interacting with C-level executives, evaluating end user requirements, and custom designing solutions, along with a good understanding of customer behavior. He has a detailed understanding of the automotive and CV markets, which will be very, very useful for us today. Satendra, we thank you so much for joining us today, and we're delighted to have you with us in this webinar. Some additional information for our attendees. All attendees have an option to chat and also share questions for the speaker in the Q&A section. Please note, the chat will be an informal section where you can just share your views with the fellow attendees and the panelists. If you want to share a question to the panelist, please share it in the Q&A section, and we will try to take it up towards the end of Satendra's presentation. So this webinar is also being live streamed on Motor India's video channel on YouTube and also on our Facebook page. So you can pass on the word to anybody who might want to join. So without further ado, over to Satendra for his presentation.
Thank you so much, Bala, and a warm good evening to all the attendees of today's session. The topic for today's webinar has been chosen as the Indian commercial vehicle industry and how do we overcome the COVID situation. Now, we all know, we have been witnessing, we have been part of this historical event in a negative sense, but how do we overcome from this situation? That is the elephant in the room, and that is what we are here to talk about. The agenda for today's discussion that we have thought about, we have divided it into 5 major aspects. One, we just wanted to understand what is the global and regional macroeconomics, how the government of different countries across Europe or North America, they are planning and they are shaping in terms of economic recovery and the current situation of economy. The second aspect, what has been the impact of coronavirus, the COVID-19 on the global automotive industry? What are the major concerns that has been raised by some of the key OEMs across the globe? And what are the different related industries that has got impacted? The most important aspect, and that is why we are here presenting about this topic, is the impact on the Indian commercial vehicle industry. What has already happened? What is the eventuality that can happen in the short run? And how do we come out of it? And the fourth, of course, with the problems that we have already seen, with the problems that might be unforeseen in the recent times, what could be the possible opportunities or possible business avenues for the commercial vehicle OEM manufacturers or the fleet operators or the smaller tier 1, tier 2 companies, component manufacturers? There could be abundant opportunities for all the players. What are the possible avenues for them to understand and relocate their business? So that is something that we would want to understand today. And lastly, some of the key best practices that has been followed by top OEMs, the risk mitigation strategies, and what could be the way forward. So just to touch base upon the global and regional macroeconomics, Here we have just discussed simply about what has been the global economy like in the last 1.5 year. So as we can see, 2019 has been pretty flat. I mean, when we talk about even on the global scenario, because of the fluctuation of oil prices or the trade war between US and China, there were a lot of storm in the global economic zone as well. And all of a sudden, in the last 1.5 quarter, the coronavirus situation has created a whammy for the industry. The economy in a whole has taken a downturn and now not looking in good shape right now. And we are actually considering that what could be the possible best scenario for the global economy to recover in the short term. So we have just forecasted and tried to estimate that what could be two possible scenarios for the global economy to recover. Either it could be, what the WHO has already confirmed that it is now an international emergency, a global emergency. So the recovery might be a little slow, but yes, there will be recovery. How is it going to be controlled in terms of number of coronavirus cases getting reduced? Are we able to flatten the curve? Are we able to create stimulus packages for the respective governments? Or are we able to control the death rates in the different countries? That would be something that is definitely going to help in the economy to bounce back in its own original form. Quickly covering the snapshots of the key regions across the globe. Of course, we know the hotspot has been China and some countries in the Europe. But one important aspect that is definitely evident from the charts here is the pin drop, the needle drop downturn of China, South Asia, and Asia Pacific. And how quickly are we able to recover that from this current situation? The economic recovery would be a little slow. Perhaps it might take 7 to 8 months if it is a V-shaped recovery, or it might be a little longer if it is a U-shaped recovery. But we are looking for something that could be, at least from the government's point of view, if we have some more packages in hand, if the industry is coming together and there's optimism in the market, there will be increase in the consumer sentiment. That is definitely going to boost the demand for the market, and that is going to definitely help in the long. Now, zooming into what has happened in terms of GDP growth of India. Again, just like following the global scenario, 2019 was not a bright year for India as well. We have been struggling in terms of our GDP growth quarter on quarter, and time and again, the brokerage firms and credit rating agencies like Moody's and Nomura, they have been degrading or contracting the GDP growth for FY20 by 1%, 2% for every quarter. And that had kind of created a negative impact among the customers. They were deferring their any kind of purchase behavior, or they were deferring any kind of buying for any new products, be it commercial vehicle, be it passenger vehicle, or for that matter, even the electronic appliances purchases had come to a downhill. So, and after the inclusion of coronavirus, the COVID situation from March onwards, that has definitely created a major dent. Already we were struggling with hardening of interest rates. The retail financing was not in a good shape. The consumer sentiment was not in a good shape. And this coronavirus situation has imposed countrywide lockdown. There are so many restrictions still applicable for varying states, and that has actually kind of diverted the whole attention from economy to right now saving ourselves. So like it has been quoted very well that year 2020 is not for the businesses. It is something where you just want to survive and move on to 2021. Perhaps we'll have a better better looking future from 2021 onwards. Talking about the recovery, there is a possibility of either a V-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery. Just to give you a quick glimpse of what a V-shaped recovery is, perhaps the recession during the Nixon crisis, that could be one example of the V-shaped recovery. And the debacle of Lehman Brothers in 2008 is something that that was an example of a U-shaped recovery. Of course, the global economists as well as the economists in India are hoping that we have a V-shaped recovery. So when we talk about a V-shaped recovery, the recovery happens at a faster pace because this is not a natural phenomena that has occurred. It is not a impact naturally on the economy, but it is a forced implication on the economy. And perhaps there is a lot of pent-up demand. There's a lot of cargo movement, or there is a lot of manufacturing activity that is still pending, and that can happen once we are back into normalcy. The lockdown is eased and everything is back to its normal shape. So the depth and length of disruption, we have already seen that what is the low of the industry. But we hope that we have a sharp recovery, and the lows that the recessionary lows that we have already seen, it is not something that is going to sustain, and we are going to bounce back immediately. Moving on, of course, the oil prices, the fuel prices is one very important topic when we discuss about the commercial vehicle industry. Recently, we have seen in the month of March as well that the crude oil prices had almost turned to negative, almost close to zero. But there were a lot of people who had asked questions that, the crude oil prices have come to close to zero. Why is not the retail prices in India decreasing? Actually, the government has increased the prices. And is that going to impact the demand of commercial vehicle? Is that going to impact the sale of FMCG products or sale of vegetables or any essential or non-essential commodities? To a certain extent, yes, because the diesel prices have been increased, but the answer is not related to the crude oil. The reason why the crude oil had dipped was predominantly because the future contracts in the month of the May future contracts were about to expire, and that was the US dollar rates were playing around, and that was one major reason why it had impacted the crude oil prices. But in terms of the Indian oil prices, it has nothing much to do with the crude oil prices. It is largely dominated by the benchmark index of Brent crude oil. And only 40% of the dependency on the retail prices of petrol or diesel is dependent on the crude oil prices. So the remaining things are the excise duties, the taxes, the cess, and all that. So right now, the oil companies are trying to save themselves also because of the lack of cargo movement, the lack of demand of oil in the industry. The oil companies, what they are trying to do is they are trying to save. They are purchasing the oil on lower prices, and they're keeping it to themselves. They're keeping the profit to themselves because they have to survive in the long run. They are collecting their revenues for themselves as well. So to a certain extent, yes, in a short run, there might be challenges for cargo movement. There might be challenges in the upsurge of commodity prices, FMCG or non-essential essential goods. But once the lockdown eases, the demand for oil surges up. Perhaps that thing will also get normalized, and the oil prices will come to a normal state. Now, moving on to the impact on the global automotive industry, just to give you a picture of what has already happened in across the globe. These might not be directly relevant to the commercial vehicle industry, but automotive industry as a whole. There are new business models that have been created in the global automotive industry. But the most important aspect that we want to touch base upon today is the decrease in the footfall that has happened across the globe. I mean, in terms of footfall, what we have seen, the vehicle sales in FY20 has reduced by almost 32%. That is because the countrywide lockdown or the social distancing norms, the consumer demand has decreased, the sentiments are not very upbeat. And that is the reason why people have deferred the plans of any future purchases or a fleet expansion or acquisition of any new cars. So that has impacted the industry a lot, and the sales have come down. Of course, with these kind of restrictions, these kind of impositions on the normal public, there is also an impact on the vehicle servicing and spare part sales. Because if you're not driving your vehicle, if you're not allowed to go for a service, I think by now most of the cars that we own or most of the fleets that we own, that would be still having an overdue bill of their maintenance schedule, and that will perhaps be caught up once the normalcy is coming into place. And because of this restriction of social distancing norms or this restrictions of country-wise lockdown, we had anticipated a 15 to 20% of dip in the demand for revenue in the sales, vehicle servicing, as well as online sales of parts as well. This is a snapshot of the key regions across the globe: the US, China, Brazil, UK, Germany, and Italy. Here we talk about the LCV sales. And a quick picture, even in the optimistic side of our view, we are not looking at growth of anything. I mean, there would be a decline of somewhere between 35 to 50% in 2020, because the situation is such that, like I said, the year 2020 is predominantly to stay alive. Nobody is looking to continue with the business. The idea is to stay alive. At least in India, we are in safe hands. At least I can say that we are in safe hands. Otherwise, the kind of population that we have, the death rate or the infection rate could have been very, very high in comparison to what has already happened. And we have already witnessed that in powerful countries like Italy or the USA. So again, for the medium duty and heavy duty truck also, there is anticipation of further impact because of the decline in the sales of medium duty and heavy duty trucks. And in the Western countries, in the European countries, there are much more advanced, business models for logistics operators, be it rental, leasing of the trucks, or truck rental, or freight aggregation models. But everything has come to a standstill at this point of time. And until and unless a vaccine is created, the situation is normal. The economy has already taken its pace in towards recovery. Things will be a little slow, perhaps by early of 2022 or towards the last quarter of 2021. There would be a better recovery, and there will be 1 to 2% of growth over 2020. Now, talking about the elephant in the room, what was the impact on the Indian commercial vehicle industry? How badly was the Indian commercial vehicle industry hit because of the coronavirus situation? So just to give you a perspective, we have not only spoken about the commercial vehicle industry, but also compared it with the other key industries that, that is very critical for the automotive industry and to the GDP of India as well. Automotive, when we say other segments, that is predominantly two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and passenger vehicle industry. But in comparison to the other three segments, the commercial vehicle industry was the most affected. And if we talk in numbers, the dip in sales from March 2019 to March 2020 was close to 90%. And year-on-year sales from FY20 to FY19 to FY20 was a decline of 29%. And of course, the picture is not rosy. I agree. Everybody agrees that. But the good thing is that the government of India has already taken steps. They have already started to regularize operations, be it manufacturing or be it plant-wise operations. So things will start taking shape with gradual pace. And as of now, with the current pace and with the current situation, we are not very sure. But what we estimate that the growth or the pickup or the resumption of commercial vehicle industry by FY21 or 22 will not be much. It will be still 1.5 to 2% growth over 2021, around 670,000. But it will not be fair, just to talk about the coronavirus situation, that the commercial vehicle industry has been deeply impacted just because of the coronavirus situation. It has been a long effect, right from 2018 when the GST rate cuts had come into picture and the axle load norms had come into picture. Because of that, a lot of overcapacity has been created in the industry. So somebody with a fleet size of, let's say, 100 trucks, now they're able to, depending upon the the load axle carrying capacity down, now they're able to carry load more by 15 to 25%. So there is not much requirement for any fleet operator to acquire new fleets. They can still continue with the current fleet and they would want to increase the fleet utilization. On top of that, the NBFC crisis, the retail financing has been in a very bad shape. And the banks had actually, the NBFC and small financial institutions had been very hard on the customers for repayment of the EMIs, repayment of the loans. So that was one important factor that had also created a lot of negativity in the market. People had deferred their purchase plans. And to top it all, the transition from BS4 to BS6. We had anticipated that the price might increase by 15%, at least by 15%. So because of that also, fleet operators had tried to defer their purchase plans and thought that let us wait, if we are able to get any discount in the pre-buying zone between January, February, March, perhaps that would be a good time to buy. But even that phase has been wiped out because of the coronavirus. So the dip in the commercial vehicle industry is a accumulation of a lot of factors. Of course, coronavirus is one of the important factors. It has created a double whammy. It has given the last nail in the coffin, but it won't be fair enough to just call that COVID situation is the main killer for the commercial vehicle industry or for the automotive industry as a whole. Just to zoom into the sales growth analysis of the commercial vehicle industry for the last 20 years. Now, one important aspect that we have highlighted here is that every time the industry has taken a dip, it has touched the bottom, it has again resurfaced and made a new high. I mean, be it the year of 2008, 2009, the Lehman Brothers debacle, or the year of 14-15 because of the increase of the crude oil prices, or the general elections, or the COVID situation. There has been a dip every time, but we have resurfaced. The commercial vehicle industry has resurfaced and made a new high. So that is the kind of optimism that we have. That is the kind of positivity that we have for the market today also. And we hope that we continue with this, and we are able to, in the short span of time, perhaps in a short to medium term, by 4 to 5 years, we hope that we are able to touch the new high again. Although the recovery path, as of now, it seems to be a little slow, but the recovery will eventually happen. How quickly we are able to adapt to the situation, how quickly we are able to adapt to new opportunities, that is something that we should be looking at. This is an interesting one, just to talk about the current production capacity. So if you look at the last two columns, the green and the red buttons, it typically talks about what the situation has been in early March, January to March, and how it has drastically transformed because of one simple virus. It has transformed from a total halt. So the green button generally indicates that the plants were operational, they were at full capacity, or as per their production planning capacity. But all of a sudden, because of the coronavirus situation, the lockdown measures, the plants and the operation was completely shut down. And that has created a lot of problems for the manufacturing of commercial vehicle OEMs, to a tune that right now, if I bluntly say that the production capacity for most of the OEMs is hovering at around 35 to 40% from what it had already done in the past 1 year. And even the sales, if we talk about the sales of Tata, Ashok Leyland and Mahindra, the top three OEMs, now, even they have dipped to a tune of 24 to 33% overall, if we talk about FY19 versus FY20. JBM is the only one in green here because it has got a very small base of vehicle numbers. That was also because of new orders that had come to them through DIMTS and other state governments for purchase of electric buses. But predominantly, the industry is in bad shape. Of course, once the production is up and running, which has already started, and the demand keeps it, the demand catches its pace, perhaps the production will be, taking baby steps to be at its normal stage. Forecasting the situation of commercial vehicle growth for the next 2 to 3 years, we have created three scenarios. One is the gradual containment, which we call as S1, the severe pandemic S2, and the global emergency. Now we understand that the plants have been not operational to the period of 45 to 50 days already, and the WHO has already declared that the situation is not a normal one; it is an international emergency. So we perceive that although we would want to have a rosy picture, but we perceive that the commercial vehicle industry will have a small pace of recovery. But these are the forecasts that we have got for for the year of FY21. In a short term, we are not keeping anything for long term as of now, because the situation is such that we are not sure that is there a possibility of coronavirus impacting the industry or the nation once again. Because recently I've come across an article wherein Wuhan, a city in China, the entire city is being retested once again because the coronavirus positive cases are resurfacing. So are we ready for that kind of situation? For most of the OEMs now, it is a lesson learned. They should have a contingency plan. They should have a plan to, how to avoid situations wherein there is a disruption in supply chain. There is a dependency on countries like China or European countries for import of parts or import of materials. So that those kind of things will have to be reduced or diminished to a certain extent, so that in future, if there is any such situation, we are able to handle a tough crisis like this. Now, like I said, with every problem, there is a disguise in terms of opportunity. When we talk about new business opportunity, we try to understand it from a global perspective. We try to understand that what has already been the best case scenarios in the global scene. So just to give you a quick picture of a global, the key megatrends, the key global megatrends, urbanization has been definitely a feature all across the globe. A lot of infrastructure projects, a lot of upcoming projects are being developed across. And with that, the urban logistic opportunity for the globe is around 6.12 trillion by 2025. But the most important aspect, and perhaps one of the important aspects that we would also want to cover today, is the bricks and clicks. What is bricks and clicks? We are talking here about the digital sales. There is a possibility for a lot of OEMs, not only passenger vehicle but also commercial vehicle OEMs, to explore the possibility that to go online and make not only sales for vehicles but also sales for services and spare parts with a medium of e-commerce or with a medium of any online platform. So, and thirdly, the connectivity and digitalization. In India, the commercial vehicle industry has been talking about digitalization. We have been talking about connectivity, but the penetration of connectivity in terms of telematics or in terms of transport management system has been to a very small extent. I mean, I would be happy to say it is still in a single digit. So until and unless we are up and running with the global picture, we are up and running with what is already happening across the globe, what are the best case studies that is already happening across the globe, we will not be able to come up to pace with the industry operational efficiency or capacity utilization. So that is again one new area for us to explore. And lastly, the new business models. In India, also of late, we have seen the freight aggregator business model that has caught up pace with big company. I mean, startups which have now turned big, like Rivigo, Blackbird Delivery. They have created new business models. They have created new operational models to reduce the operational efficiency, reduce the logistical cost, and increase operational efficiency in the industry. And that has created a new customer base and a new fan base for these startups. Similarly, there could be cases for truck rental or truck lease. These are the opportunity, these are the areas where the commercial vehicle OEM industry and fleet operators can definitely look upon and can possibly explore those avenues. When we talk about India in particular, and these are the 8 key mega trends that we can discuss about. But today we'll be just focusing on digital transformation. I've highlighted that in red. Of course, there are other pointers like evolving regulation, benchmarking global standards. But as of date, evolving regulations is not something that we would be interested in as a whole, as industry as a whole, because we have already seen axle load norms, we have already seen the BS6, we have already seen the safety regulations, and these are kind of increasing the cost of the vehicles, and that is creating a dent on the demand for commercial vehicles. So as of now, we are done enough with the changing, evolution of the regulations. We would be happy to continue for a while and catch up with our demand, to catch up with the industry space for a while, so that we are able to focus more on reducing the logical cost and increasing the operational efficiency. Of course, electrification, telematics, these things will take its own sweet time and fit in place. But right now, the main agenda for the commercial vehicle industry would also be digital transformation and avenues that it can offer to the industry as a whole. Now, this is a snapshot. This is not directly related to the commercial vehicle industry, but it is just a clue from what we have already witnessed for passenger vehicle industry. The coronavirus situation has also impacted two-wheeler as well as passenger vehicle industry. However, they have taken it with a pinch of salt, and they have come up with brilliant ideas for online sales. They are booking new cars on the online platform. They are booking new service maintenance schedules on the online platform. So is there an opportunity for commercial vehicle industry also to explore such an avenue? It is a big question mark as of now, perhaps because the demographic of the commercial vehicle fleet operators might not be very conducive for an e-commerce purchase. However, there are segments like the small commercial vehicle, the less than 3.5 ton segment, or to a certain extent LCV segment, the light commercial vehicle segment. These are the vehicle segment which is largely driven by e-commerce sector, and much more these are the more organized ones in terms when we talk about the e-commerce sector. So there, I sense there is an opportunity for commercial vehicle OEMs to explore this area wherein e-commerce sales can happen and online sales can happen for small commercial vehicle or light commercial vehicle industry. Of course, medium and heavy commercial vehicle industry, anything which is more than 17 ton to up to 49 ton, that is a different ball game altogether. A lot of credit relations happen, a lot of dealer relations happen, and a lot of exploring of opportunities for extended warranty or annual maintenance contracts. These are some of the perks that a fleet operator would look at when they are having a acquisition of large fleet or a small fleet also. So that might not be an area for industry to explore, but definitely we think that small commercial vehicle and light commercial vehicle industry is something where the industry can definitely explore and think about in terms of online and digital sales. Moving on, when we were talking about the mega trends, one important aspect that we wanted to touch base upon was the logistical inefficiency of India. The numbers in circle, the big circles, are the global numbers. So if we talk about the overall efficiency, logistical efficiency at a global scale, it is somewhere hovering around 40 to 45%. And to a stark contrast, India is still lingering at 38 to 40%. And to my surprise, even the logistical cost of transportation in India is the highest among all its peer of developing economies. So that is one area, where India needs to play out. And it is just not possible that, just by acquisition of new fleet or acquisition of BS6 trucks or safety enabled trucks, we will be able to achieve this. There are a lot of hidden parameters. There are a lot of hidden factors that we need to understand. The road network has to be up to date. The measures like e-way bill, toll taxes, all these have to be more streamlined so that there is less stoppage of truck driver at a particular location, and there is shorter turnaround time for a delivery of a cargo from one place to another. Deriving from the digital transformation aspect, this is an opportunity for the industry as a whole, what we call as truck as a service opportunity. And within this, there are different areas which emerge as a business opportunity for the industry. I have been harping about telematics and fleet management system. We say that it has been in the industry for last 10 or 12 years, but the penetration rate is still to a very minimal side because there is low customer awareness. People still perceive it to be a added cost, and they do not have a useful case study for them to implement them in its current fleet. That is one area where we need to curb that blockade in the mind of customer and try to implement telematics and fleet management solutions in the existing fleet. Digital retail, we just spoke about digital retail. There is opportunity for not only commercial vehicle OEMs, but also for vehicle servicing, also for component sales online, as well as a lot of other factors that can be explored digitally. Transport management system, again, this is very similar to telematics FMS in terms of its penetration level in India. It has been around for a while, but of late we have seen a surge and uptick in the the demand for transportation management system, and things like telematics or FMS or TMS are the ones that is going to curb the efficiency problem of India in terms of logistics transportation. Business analytics is another area the industry has been talking about, Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0, but big data and machine learning is not something that we have been largely implementing in India for commercial vehicle industry at least. There are useful cases for big logistical operators like DHL or FedEx, wherein they have used big data and analytics to analyze their warehouse management, their inventory management. So a similar approach in the commercial vehicle industry for MSMEs, for commercial vehicle OEMs, as well as for the fleet operators, will definitely churn around the bottom line and top line for the industry as well. One important aspect that we also wanted to cover is the fragmentation of the commercial vehicle fleet operators, the logistics industry, so to say. As we all understand that roughly 2 to 2.5% of the entire fleet operators in India cover 22 to 25% of the vehicle park in India. And the remaining 98% is fragmented and divided among small and medium fleet operators, somewhere who acquire who are single driver owners or very small fleet, less than 5 trucks, to somewhere between 20 to 50 trucks. But these truck owners, these fleet operators who are having fleet size of less than 5 trucks or somewhere between 5 to 20 trucks, are the ones who are deeply impacted by the current situation or the turbulence in the economy right now. The reason is because they are not able to sustain the pressure that a large fleet operator will be able to hand upon him because of economies of scale that they can manage, the contracts that they have with large corporate houses, and the demand that is in the industry. They are not able to catch up to that pace. And that is why the small fleet operators have requested, they are lobbying with through the Trucking Association to the Government of India that if the preemptive taxes can be reduced or eliminated for the next 3-4 years, or else they will completely wipe out because of their requirement of paying the EMIs and their debts. So that would be a big problem for them until and unless the only opportunity for them is to consolidate and merge across with bigger fleet operators and be a part of the larger economy of scale. So that could be one way out for the industry to look upon, wherein the smaller fleet operators can look upon getting merged with bigger players, and then try to enjoy the logistical benefits in the industry. Another hot topic that the industry has been currently discussing is the vehicle scrappage policy. Now, of course, there are challenges also for vehicle scrappage policy. The government has been pondering upon the possibilities of vehicle scrappage policy, but right now the need of the hour is something like a vehicle scrappage policy. That is definitely going to create a surge in the demand if a well thought vehicle scrappage policy, something with good incentivization schemes for the vehicle purchases. If that kind of things are in place, perhaps vehicle scrappage policy is going to be a fresh breath of air for the commercial vehicle industry. The government, on the contrary, has to also think about what will happen with the scrapped vehicles. Do we have a particular landfill or area to keep the discarded old vehicles, or is there a possibility of selling still in condition, running condition vehicles to underdeveloped countries, wherein there is still opportunity for commercial vehicle OEMs as well as the government to make some moolah out of that as well. So that is one area that the industry can definitely, the industry as well as the government of India as well as the fleet operator have to come together and think of a strategic devising plan for a vehicle scrappage policy. To sum all the opportunities in one sheet, we have divided the commercial vehicle industry related growth opportunities into 5 aspects. Freight aggregators, like I said, it is a new business model that we have already seen with companies like Delivery or Blackbug or Truckola. Connectivity, we have been harping about connectivity, but I think this is the time now for the digital retail sales as well as connectivity in India to boom. There was a time, I mean, just to give you a quick example, there was a time in 1992 when the mobile phones had just come to India, and the outgoing cost was somewhere around 32 rupees and the incoming call was 16 rupees. At that point in time, nobody had thought that mobile phone would be so important. Everybody thought that this is a pace, this is not something that is going to stick to the Indian market. But today, once we move out from our houses, we might at least forget our wallets, our purses, but there is no possibility that we'll step out of our houses without a mobile phone. So that is the power of digitalization. That is the power of connectivity, and everything is on the click of a button. Everything is on the power of our mobile phones. So if we have a similar platform, if we are able to devise payment plans through with the use of digital platforms, if you are able to come up with telematic solutions, predictive maintenance, predictive diagnosis for commercial vehicles, that could be some area where the industry can shape up, and it could start looking at some of the more advanced countries like the USA or countries in Europe. Electric vehicles, as of now, we think that it might take a backseat. Of course, the passenger vehicle, the passenger buses in the electric vehicle segment might be still on an up growth, but the electric trucks, it is not a good idea right now. Perhaps electric buses, something that the industry was talking about. For the next couple of years, the state transport undertakings as well as the city transport undertakings might also want to defer their purchase plans for electric buses. Aftermarket and vehicle service as well as vehicle leasing. These are again 2 important areas where we see that there is a lot of avenues for the industry to explore opportunities because there will be pent-up demand for used trucks, there will be pent-up demand for new trucks. So is there a possibility for truck sharing, just like car sharing has already happened in India, although not a very successful one, but definitely it is catching up with the industry and catching up with the global peers. Similarly, is there a possibility for industry to evaluate that opportunity? We have to wait and watch. Aftermarket and vehicle service. Of course, there is a huge list of things to do when we talk about aftermarket and vehicle service. It could be also related to digital retail when we talk about e-commerce of online, e-commerce of spare parts or e-commerce for services. So that is one area for the commercial vehicle industry also to explore. I understand that yesterday's speech by Mr. Modi about the stimulus package that was given to the government of given from the government of India, it is largely focused on the MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. And these are the most important aspects. These are the most important attributes of the Indian industry, because 97% of the industries that is registered under the government of India, under the companies of India are MSMEs. And if they are not performing well, definitely the GDP of India is going to get a major dent, because they are contributing at least to a tune of 32 to 33% to the GDP of India. And largely also to a certain extent that 40 to 45% of export and import is largely governed by the MSMEs. The MSMEs, if they are not operational, if they are not in good shape, eventually the logistics industry is going to get hampered. So thanks to Modi ji, a lot has been done in terms of bringing them back on its foot, because there were chances that at least 25 to 30% of MSMEs were about to get shut down, and more than 50% of the MSMEs were at a stage where they were not able to pay salary to their employees. So this stimulus package might be a fresh breath of air for the MSMEs as well. And when we talk about MSMEs, there are a lot of component manufacturers, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers who are, supplying to commercial vehicle OEMs. They can also explore opportunities of e-commerce segment. I mean, emergence of e-commerce is already there with smaller players like Goodmo or Spare Hub. But is there a possibility for big fleet operators or medium fleet operators to, control their purchasing of control their purchasing of spare parts through an online portal? Either they could, have an in-house workshop. They could make use of the in-house garages and be more vocal about going local, just like Mr. Modi ji said. And even localization. Right now, the extent to which India is dependent upon the supply of import of spare parts from China and European countries is to a tune of 32%. And now that is going to get reduced to at least 15 to 25%. And if that happens, if all the commercial vehicle OEMs start to slowly degrade, start to slowly curb their dependency on foreign imports and try to source more and more indigenous parts, that will be a boost for the MSMEs and for the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers as well. Now, towards the last 2 or 3 concluding slides, where we talk about what are the best practices that has been followed by the top 3 OEMs, Ashok Leyland, Tata Motors, and Mahindra. When we talk about the risk mitigation strategy, the 3 important aspects that we can highlight here outrightly is the financial support to dealers to boost liquidity. Why is it important? Because they are the backbone for any commercial vehicle OEM manufacturers. If the dealers are not in good shape, they are not going to sustain. And if they are not going to sustain, who are going to sell the vehicles for them? So it is very important for the whole ecosystem to be well oiled, to be well functional, so that they all are in it they all are in it together, and they all will be out of this together. So that is one mantra that the industry is already following. The top OEMs are already following. They have given a lot of packages to their dealers for them to control their current operational expenses or control their interest on the lendings that they have already done. Secondly, there was an opportunity that the OEMs have captured when the operational plants were shut, the plant operation was shut down. And that is in terms that the medical equipments were manufactured by players like Tata Motors or Ashok Leyland in terms of ventilators or other small equipments were manufactured. So that is one area where, also in terms of helping the government and also in terms of an opportunity that was well captured by the industry. So that is something that the OEMs have already done. And lastly, when we talk about the customer, definitely the customer is the god for the OEMs. Now, there have been payment relief programs for the customers as well, the fleet operators who are not able to pay the EMIs or they are already facing the moratorium. They have already utilized the moratorium that was on offer from the government, from the banks as well. Still, there are packages that are being developed for the customer. There has been extension of maintenance and service programs. There is no stringent application of deadline for an warranty expiry or a guarantee expiry for the customers. So that kind of relief has been given to the customers for them to take take a space and come back hard for the industry as well. On a conclusion aspect, one important aspect that most of the fleet operators as well as the commercial vehicle OEMs will have to think about is, first comes the safety for their own employees, and not only employees. When I talk about the fleet operators, for them, their employees would be the drivers and the keepers. We have already seen the exodus of a lot of migrants from their current places of work to their hometowns. Now, these are the drivers and these are the maintenance people for a trucking agency or a truck operator. If they are not going to come back and if they're not going to rejoin the work that they were already doing, there might be another problem for the commercial vehicle fleet operators, and that will be the shortage of truck drivers in a short span of time. How quickly is that going to happen? How quickly is that going to recover? That is a big question mark again for the industry to think upon. So even for the commercial vehicle industry or for any corporate, the first line of defense for them would be the employees. They have to take care of the employees when the lockdown is eased. I mean, it could be sanity checks for the plants, or it could be sanitization checks for the plant as well as offices. Those things have to be in place. And in terms of the long-term strategies that can be, or the risk mitigation strategies that can be thought about for the OEMs would be, to rethink about the business continuity plan, and also keep into picture that what if a similar contingency happens in future. There could be a possibility that there might be a resurfacing of coronavirus. There is a similar lockdown that can happen in the future also. And again, the supply chain will get disrupted. At that point of time, it is the local supply chain that is going to come to help. And we have to paint a picture such that, our dependency on the localization and our dependency on Make in India initiative comes to a point wherein we are not anymore dependent upon China or European importers, so that we are completely capable enough to handle such situation within India itself. With that, I come to an end. I'll be open for any questions that you have.
Yeah, thank you, Satyen. Thank you for a very, very nice presentation. Yeah, so we have and we are receiving a set of questions from our attendees. I would share with them, share it with you one by one. Just give me a minute.
Sure.
Yeah. Just give me a minute. We're visible. Yeah. Right. A quick clarification to start with, Satyen. One of our attendees wanted to know if the CV sales data you had shared in one of the slides, does it also include LCVs, or is it only M and HCVs?
It also includes LCVs. It is
LCVs.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah, I think that is clarified. And some of the megatrends which you shared, I think you had indicated 8 of them. How relevant would they stay in the post-COVID era? This was one of the questions that came in.
Right. So I think all of those would be relevant in the post-COVID era. It is just that some of the mega trends might take a little more time for taking a pace in the Indian commercial vehicle industry, but some of them would need immediate attention, like something like digital transformation, or something like coming up to the operational efficiency, logistical efficiency. These are some of the mega trends that needs immediate attention. But something like implementation of electric powertrain in the commercial vehicle industry, or benchmarking with the global standards of safety or powertrain, that would be, that can happen at a later pace also. That is not the need of the hour as of now.
Okay, right. Another one was the impact of digital transformation on cost of operation and freight charges. What do you think would be the impact of digital transformation on these aspects?
Right. So in a short term, of course, I totally understand from where the gentleman has come at. Even if I talk about a small aspect of digital transformation, let's say a telematics or a transport management system, initially it appears that it is an added cost. If I have got, let's say, a very small fleet size of less than 5 trucks, for me, it is an increase in the total cost of ownership. But in the longer run, at least for somebody who's having a larger fleet, let's say 15 to 20 trucks, for them, it would make sense, in order to have a better sense of logistical operations. There would be features like geofencing. There would be features like route optimization. There is a huge hue and cry about pilferage of oil, the theft of vehicle fuel. So that can be controlled. The driving habits of the driver can be controlled. So there are a lot of features that actually, bring a positive case study for the commercial vehicle fleet operators, so that in the longer run, the total cost of ownership for a truck driver or a truck operator would definitely reduce. In a short term, if you have a myopic vision, definitely you will think that it's an added cost for us. We should not go ahead with a digital transformation for at least our fleet operations.
Okay, right. Something related to the freight and tonnage as well. Do you see any shift in truck usage trend? I mean, movement towards even higher tonnage, say upwards of 40 tons compared to lower tonnage. Do you see any change in shift happening on these lines?
If we are talking about the immediate impact in the short run because of the coronavirus situation, what we perceive is there could be a possibility of requirement of higher tonnage vehicles because there is a lot of shipment that is already stuck at the ports. So there will be immediate requirement for movement of these cargo, maybe ISO containers or 49 tonner trucks. And also on the smaller scale for the small commercial vehicles as well as light commercial vehicles, because these are the trucks or these are the commercial vehicles that will be largely transporting and doing the last mile delivery. So there might be a pent up demand from e-commerce players as well as at the mandi houses for transportation of food and vegetables or transportation of food grains. So there might be a surge in short-term demand for these two segments, at least in the short run. Eventually, as the industry pans up, I don't think right now there is a possibility for huge tonnage trucks, because in the last in the last 2 or 3 decades, we have already seen that how overloading has hampered the industry and how we are shifting towards higher tonnage vehicles. It is just not right to say about how the overloading would be impacting the situation in India in the future as well.
Okay. Your take on dedicated freight corridor. Do you see this? How do you see this impacting freight costs in the market?
Yeah, that is definitely a good one. I think the dedicated freight corridor is something that is really going to boost the cargo movement. Now, we have seen that even with the removal of a lot of toll plazas and the removal of check nakas at between the state borders, we have seen there are shorter turnaround times for the movement of cargo. And with that, what has happened is a fleet operator is able to take more load. And because of more load, they're able to also transform their business from, let's say, doing 4 or 5 rounds in 1 year from a movement for a movement between Delhi to Bangalore. Now they're able to do a 7 or 8 cargo movement from one place to another. So a dedicated freight corridor would definitely be something that can, increase the bottom line for a transporter, for a trucker, and definitely decrease the cargo time that is taken for transportation of goods. So it will be both advantage for the fleet operators for the delivery of the products to the customers as well. It will be a shorter turnaround time for the customers as well.
Okay. One of our attendees wants to know if is there a policy in the works to make rail logistics the standard for long distance transport and use the road freight more like in tandem as a hub and spoke model?
See, in India, largely the transportation is done by 60% of the transportation is carried by road. So if there is a competition from the rail, if there is any policy that is being formulated by the rail authorities for competing with the road transportation, that would be definitely a good sign for the for the road transportation as well in the long run, because one, it could give a not only hub and spoke model will be created, because that has already been into picture when we had done the GST changes. There were a lot of warehouses that was built at the outskirts of the city, so that the time taken for cargo movement has been reduced. So to a certain extent, that might not deter the movement of cargo with the road logistics, but it will be helpful in the longer run as well.
You're right. Probably they'll have to work hand in hand. Right.
We'll have to work hand in hand.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot on the truck side. On the bus or passenger carrier side, I mean, with social distancing coming into play, what do you think will happen to the bus segment overall? I mean, bus transportation, passenger movement across the country, and where do you think sales growth will happen for the bus segment?
Correct. So there was a lot of bus transportation and lot of business models that have also come up, like shuttle services for bus for transportation of employees, as well as transportation of lot of mass commuting in a short. But now, because of the social distancing norms and how long is that going to continue in India, that might take a backseat as of now. But that could be also possible. That could also have been a possibility for the airline industry or for the rail industry. But these things are already operational now. There is a negative impact on the prices, in terms that the prices might go up. So there could be a similar possibility for the bus segment also. And the segment that we are looking up would be the medium and heavy commercial buses, that we think that there will be an increase in the demand for medium and heavy commercial buses in the long run, because those are the ones that can actually carry more passengers, and the break-even point for these public transportation system will be much more easier.
Okay. Another one was with the excess capacity, in the market right now, especially on the road. In fact, vehicles lying idle. Why will customers actually buy new vehicles? This is pertaining to trucks typically. Why should customers or fleets buy new vehicles across the next 12 to 18 months?
I totally buy this point. I mean, I have got a very similar thought about overcapacity that has already been created because of the GST and because of the load axle, and there is a lot of pent up demand. I have a similar thought, but along those lines, I mean, right now the need of the hour for any fleet operator would be to increase the fleet utilization. If they have got 100 trucks, perhaps not all their 100 trucks are being completely utilized. Not all the 100 trucks are paying for their own EMIs. So until and unless a fleet operator is able to reach to a level wherein at least 60 to 70% of the trucks are able to pay for their EMIs, there might be a differing of purchasing and acquisition of new fleets. So that might be a short-term vision for the industry. But but the contrary to this is also that there is a lot of pent-up demand that is already in place. Maybe the manufacturing setup, the manufacturing sector, the MSMEs, or the port operators, there will be a lot of cargo movement that is pending, and that will come out eventually after the lockdown releases. So once that happens, in a short term, there might be an opportunity for the commercial vehicle OEMs to pitch in their vehicles, the new products. But in the longer run, definitely yes, the overcapacity is going to have a subdued demand effect on the commercial vehicle industry.
Right. Okay. You shared your views on electromobility, right? The take in India. Based on that, there was a question which said, do you think companies will stop focusing and developing electric vehicles in the near future, and to focus more on conventional vehicles? That was a question that came in. What is your take? Because you said EVs are not going to be the focal point soon in the near future.
Correct. To a certain extent, yes. It might not completely stop down, because there is a possibility that the next big U-turn that the industry might take, either by 25 or 2030. I don't know the dates. I mean, I have no clues about that dates. But there is a possibility that because of the CAFE regulations, because of the emission norms, the emission situation, the carbon dioxide footprint that we have, there might be a situation when there is a lot of pressure on the government, the environmental ministry, to curb on the usage of diesel powertrains. And the first line of attack would be, the commercial vehicle, because these are the diesel guzzlers and these are the ones who produce the maximum pollution for the environment. So there is a possibility that in a long run, perhaps if that kind of impact is happening, commercial vehicles will have to go off road, maybe in a phased manner. So all the OEMs will have to be prepared for such a situation, and slowly but steadily they would be continuing their progress, because they have already invested a lot in terms of capital expenditure for R&D development in electric powertrains. So they are not going to stop it immediately. Perhaps the focus will be a little shifted, but it will take a slower chain of events in the long run.
Okay. I'm going to try to combine a set of questions into one. You can take them one by one. What do you think will be the impact of the entire COVID pandemic on driver availability for trucks? Because all of these segments have to do with a lot of manpower and personal usage. So one will be drivers for driving trucks, especially the long distance aspect of it. One. Second will be on the sales side, on the vehicle dealership side. For instance, there was an attendee who asked, do we see contactless delivery, becoming more popular? So on the vehicle sales side, what impact do you see happening? And also on after sales service and aftermarket side, where there is a lot of a workforce and manpower involved. How do you see these three segments getting impacted because of what we're seeing right now?
Okay, right. The first aspect, the driver or the keeper shortage, definitely that will be one scenario that we are going to face in the short term. But we also have a thought that, the drivers or the keepers of any truck or fleet operator, they are also the ones who have been working across the truck industry, driving one truck to another all their lives. I mean, I'm sure right by now, they might not be having a second opportunity. They might not be having a second job, or back in the native towns, they might not be having, a farming land to cultivate and start the living again. So there would be large dependency on the truck driving industry for them as well. So in a short run, they might have gone back to their native hometowns. They might have returned to their places of origin, but that would be only for short term. Once the lockdown releases and things are back in its shape, perhaps these people will also return. In a short term, that there might be a crunch in this situation, but it will not last for a long time. So that answers question number one. Question two is about digital sales, is it?
Yeah. So also the impact of digital sales on vehicle dealerships. Yeah.
Right. In commercial vehicle industry, like I said, the medium and commercial vehicle industry, heavy commercial vehicle industry, might not be the right customers for digital sales. But yes, small commercial vehicle as well as light commercial vehicle could be one aspect. These could be the segments wherein they would be, because they are largely driven by organized sectors like e-commerce or small MSMEs or manufacturing sectors. Which is to a certain extent fair to say that these are organized sectors, and they might be the one who would look for contactless delivery. They would be the one who would be booking and making purchase orders online. So definitely, I see an opportunity for commercial vehicle OEMs to explore this area of digital sales, wherein small commercial vehicle, at least the small commercial vehicle and light commercial vehicle industry is tapped. And to talk about the third aspect, the service and maintenance. Again, there is a couple of things. I mean, here there is an opportunity for the dealerships, the 3S dealerships of commercial vehicle OEMs to explore opportunities that wherein there are possibilities of mobile servicing, just like what we can think about in the passenger vehicle industry. So if somebody is having a small fleet of, let's say, 5 or 10 trucks, they might not be having their own garages. But if there's a possibility of doing a regular maintenance checkup or regular maintenance services at their places of booking or at the places of transporter, definitely that is one area that can be thought upon. And in that way, the social distancing norms can be also taken care of, as well as the requirement of the industry for vehicle services and maintenance can be also taken care of. So that will go hand in hand altogether.
Right. Those are very good recommendations. From a supply chain perspective, Satyen, how do you think OEMs can mitigate supply chain risks post-COVID? And what do you think their number one priority should be for proper or efficient supply chain management?
So right now, a lot of OEMs might be dependent upon, So when we talk about supply chain, I'll first of all talk about the local supply chain. A lot of small tier 2 and tier 3 companies who might be supplying to the commercial vehicle OEMs, because of the lockdown and because of the lack of cargo movement, there might also be a situation wherein some important parts or some important components are not available right now because the production has altogether come to a halt. So in order to curb a situation like this, it will eventually happen, at least in the short term. When the lockdown releases, the MSMEs, the small component manufacturers, are going to start producing their components, but they will be looking at what is the current demand that is happening in the market. What is the commercial vehicle manufacturers talking about the demand, and only then they will be producing their components. They are not going to come to a normalcy level all of a sudden, even though the demand is still not existing, or we do not foresee a strong demand in the near term. So perhaps it will be a very cautious approach in the short term for the MSMEs, the component manufacturers, to supply the components to the commercial vehicle OEMs. Now, talking about the international supply chains, perhaps indigenization and localization is something that the commercial vehicle OEMs will have to seriously ponder upon, because in past also, when there was a situation of tsunami, the passenger vehicle industry was badly impacted, specifically the Japanese and Korean automakers like Hondas, the Suzukis, and the Nissans. And again, we have been knocked on because of the coronavirus situation, and the international supply chain has come to a certain halt. So until and unless we have got a very small dependency on international imports, we will be always having a similar situation time and again. It might be a cyclical factor. It might happen after 5 years. It might happen after 10 years. But we have to get ready with our local capacity, with our local capabilities, and only then there might be a case in point in the future where we do not completely dependent upon critical parts from international hotspots.
Okay, right. That was my next question. I think you answered it on localization. There's one question from an area we've not really touched upon much. What will the financiers do in such a market scenario where the fleets are not running? They're actually not making any business, not much. So should the financiers go aggressive, with their customers, or just wait and watch, give them some more time and see what happens?
I might not be the best person to actually comment upon what the financials can do, but definitely what I perceive is the government can come up to to the NBFCs or the banking sector and try to provide a package for them as well, because like I said, the MSMEs or the small fleet operators have gone back to the government. They are lobbying for erosion of the taxes that they are paying, because these are the people, these are the industries or enterprises who are going to immediately get wiped out because of the current situation. These are the people who are not earning a whole lot, but they have to pay the EMIs, they have to pay the debts. So if the financials are being very hard on the customers, perhaps whatever demand that we are looking at in the short term, perhaps that will also die out, and it won't be a conducive environment for the industry to grow. So perhaps the government needs to intervene here and come up with a suitable package for the banking sector, for the NBFC sector, so that there is an ease in the retail financing, there is an ease in the lending rates, and the industry can come back on its feet at a shorter pace.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your views on that as well, Satendra. Probably we'll take 3 to 4 more questions at the max, and then we'll wind up. That's okay.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Your take on Chinese companies trying to take over Indian companies, given the crisis that's going on right now. Do you think the government should come up with anything else to kind of protect, any initiatives kind of protect the interest of Indian companies?
Again, that's a question that would be best left to the experts to answer. But if I have to give my views, the Chinese companies have been very aggressive in overtaking of Indian companies. I mean, there was a large fear looming when the Republic Bank of China had acquired share of, I think, 4 or 5% in the HDFC Limited company, and that had created a negative sentiment in the industry altogether in the next day itself. In the larger industry, I'm not talking about the commercial vehicle industry. And until and unless the government steps in and says that there has to be, in fact, the government has already taken some steps wherein the policies of FDI and the policies of corporate mergers and acquisitions have been revisited, I think, within a very short span, so that any hostile takeovers or any hostile mergers and acquisitions can be prevented, specifically from countries like China. So I think that thing is already being taken care by the government. The government might need to be a little more aggressive and vocal about that as well, if it answers your question.
Brilliant.
So again, I'm not an expert in that field, but just to give my
right. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think we've covered most of the questions that actually came in on during registration. Also, right now, couple of segments on which our audience wants to know your views. One is the STU segment. When do you see governments actually placing orders for buses going, considering what's happening right now? That's one. And another one was particularly on truck applications, like, for instance, the trailer segment. Is that a segment that will pick up in the near future? And there was a very pertinent question from one of our attendees who's associated with the trailer segment. He wanted to know if trailer is a good space to actually pursue, or should trailer makers look at diversifying? What are your views on this?
Right, the STUs and CTUs, no, when the commercial vehicle industry was not doing well, the commercial vehicle segment was the one which was actually saving the industry as a whole. So while the medium and heavy commercial industry dipped by 51%, the bus segment had already dipped by not more than 8 to 9%. And even when the recovery will happen, what we estimate, what we anticipate is, there might be a decline of 10 to 12% for the medium and heavy commercial vehicle industry, but the bus segment would be only declining by 4 to 5%. Having said that, in a short term scenario between 1 to 2 years, there is a possibility that the STUs and the CTUs might defer the purchase plans of acquisition or replacement of their current and existing fleets. So there will be a loss in demand for for the passenger vehicle segment, but that is already being catered by other segments, so that won't be hampered much. But yes, definitely the STUs and CTUs will be a little cautious in the short run. So that is the answer for your first question. The second question about the trailer segment, we have also a very similar thought about the application segment of tractor trailer, because of late we have seen that the utilization of tractor trailer segment is somewhere is a segment where there has been an uptick in the demand. So a lot of truck makers are focusing more on that segment. They are trying to bring more robust products. They are trying to bring more refined products for the industry to absorb, so that. And on top of that, if you have witnessed the products from some of the automakers like Tata or Ashok Leyland, they're also planning to have predictive maintenance and fault diagnosis at an earlier stage, because these are the trucks that are generally used for long haul transportation, and there won't be a time for a delay in the transportation of goods. So if there is a faulty breakdown, the recovery time for that particular segment is definitely going to hamper the whole cargo transportation. So the OEMs are working upon better products. The OEMs are working upon better packages for the fleet operators also. So that is one segment that we are also having very good views about.
Okay, right. There were a few other specific questions, but I think we will have to call it a day here because of time constraints. Thank you so much, Satin. I think going by the feedback, it was a very, very informative and valuable session. So thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights. And a big thanks to all the attendees for participating, sharing your views, and making this a very, very interactive session. We have a poll for this webinar, which we're just launching. So anyone who would want to leave your feedback on the webinar, we'd be happy to take your feedback. And you can also share your views on mail with us and directly to Satin as well. So that is one. And like many of you had asked, the presentation will be made available along with a video recording of the entire webinar. So it would be available on Motor India's website and video channel. And you would also receive an email with the links to these, and you're free to download and keep them for future reference. Yeah. So with that, we come to the end of this session. Just a quick information. We have another webinar in 2 days' time on Friday, May the 15th. This will be on advanced high strength and wear resistant steels in tippers and trailers. So anybody interested in such a topic, you are free to join, where we will have expert from SSAB Special Steels talk about their steel brand strengths and hardox. So yeah, anything else from your side, Satin? Some parting words to our attendees?
Just on the parting note, we understand that the situation has been tough, but right now the only way out for the industry as a whole and for the economy as a whole is we have to be optimistic about the current scenario. We know the coronavirus situation is going to stay with us for a long time, at least 2 to 3 years before a concrete step is taken in terms of vaccination or in terms of complete erosion of coronavirus. So we have to be upbeat about the situation. We have to be optimistic about the situation, and definitely it has never been a situation where a virus has defeated the humankind. So we are going to come out of it, and we are going to come out of it very strong.
Thank you so much, Satyan. I think staying positive is really of utmost importance during these tough times, and also staying together as an industry, working together, I think will definitely help us overcome, this big crisis. So thank you once again, Satyan, and all our attendees. Yeah. So until the next webinar, take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Motor India and Bala.